Okay, well, welcome in everybody. Sorry we're a little bit late. Having some difficult technical problems here setting things up, but we are live. So welcome in everybody to the Plague Puppets YouTube channel. Your home for all things Plague Puppets moving forward. For those of you just tuning in, this channel is dedicated to giving you a sneak peek behind the scenes of creating the Plague Puppets pilot, as well as other facets of the 3D puppet verse. We'll take you on a journey from scripting and storyboards to previs and animatics to final animation, and finally rendering and post-production. So this will be a good little walkthrough to see the process of pre-production and going into animation and fleshing out the ideas and the story here as we move forward. To learn more about the project overall, you can visit us at plaguepuppets.io. That's Plague Puppets with an O.io. You can explore the Orphanarium, read up on the history of the Plague Puppets, ultimately adopt a puppet to be your small and mighty friend. So that's our goal here, to get the puppets out into the world. You can also follow us along on Twitter, X, and Instagram at Plague Puppets. So you can find us there at Plague Puppets for daily updates, NFT news, and of course, visit julieadams.com. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Julie. That's Juli Adams.com. Amazing artist, sculptor, painter, and creator behind the Plague Puppets. She'll have lots of daily musings, comic strips, cool pictures, updates on her artwork, new clothing line that she's working on that's very exciting. So we can get some human-sized outfits that match the puppets. And so give her a follow and check her out there. Also, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe, give us a thumbs up. If you're interested in what we're exploring and showing off as we're sort of cultivating this project together, and want to invite you in to be a part of the process. So please pass on any friends or family that would love to play in our world. So with that, yeah, we're sort of entering into this new phase here. It's been a process throughout the last couple of weeks of just getting the building blocks here for the animatic and understanding the script and dialogue and timing for all the shots. So some of you that have seen the previous episodes, those were all very sketchy, but at this point, we've been able to dive into Unreal 5, which is really exciting. That's our 3D software that we use to create these worlds and environments. We'll be going into Maya for animation on some future episodes. But thought we'd just catch you guys up. I know it's been about a week or so. I think we're going to be doing most likely weekly updates on Thursdays here, 3 o'clock p.m. Pacific time on the West Coast. And that'll give you a good update for sort of what we've been building and creating throughout the week. A lot of the working sessions, they're a little slow, and we have a lot of nitty-gritty stuff to get into, so we don't want to necessarily bore you guys with all that or show all the ingredients that we're creating here. So we just want to do some weekly reviews, and we thought we'd start off this week with we're building out the exterior of the Orphanarium in our neighborhood, and trying to get just sort of the sensibilities of updating the models and starting to introduce some more environmental things. They have a little urban planning upscale revisionist design here to the neighborhood. So we're just trying to bring those elements along and show you guys what we've been working on. So we're going to share John's screen here, and we're just going to kind of fly through what is basically our tabletop setup. Again, I use a lot of stop motion parlance as far as the way that I would build out a world here, and a lot of you saw what we did last time, but we'll dive in and just kind of show you some of the upgrades that we did this week. And so John, if you want to take us into the overhead here, and I'll share John's screen so you guys can check this out. Yeah, so very cool. You can see we've started to populate the neighborhood with some trees. Again, just figuring out the spatial relationship between the road, the sidewalks, the orphanarium, the trees across the house. That's the simple building blocks that we went into. But, once we sort of just sketched that out from a basic standpoint last week that you guys all saw, what we decided was we needed a little bit more of a warm family neighborhood, something you would see in the Pacific Northwest, maybe in the Midwest, a tree-lined street. We decided to move the sidewalks off of the curb a little bit, so we can kind of show you some of the building blocks here again of what we would do in stop motion with having these separate elements as set pieces and be able to move them around, kind of like a puzzle piece, basically, to help sketch everything in before we get into, final textures, which we did do a little bit of. But yeah, John, do you want to kind of highlight like the curb and the sidewalk and kind of show those elements that we were moving around this week?
Sure. These guys. It's the foliage painting.
Yeah, so you can see like here with the sidewalk, originally we had it up to the edge of the curb going into the street, but it didn't feel so warm and inviting or suburban, and we wanted to get a little bit of a warmer feel and get more textures with the trees that we added in as well. So doing some research and looking in our neighborhoods in Portland and in Seattle, looking at how these houses are set back a little bit from the curb, and then you have a sidewalk for the pedestrians, and so they're a little bit protected from the elements of the cars and the danger that Enid's going to go into. So we kind of lined up these trees and lampposts in a way to fill in that middle ground there. And then we decided with the Orphanarium, and this is a model that we are working with going forward, we're going to do some restoration and some painting to give it a more magical, fun feel to it. Right now it's a little bit dark and dingy and scary, but we love the design of the house. So we're able to take this texture and this model and do a little repainting and liven it up a little bit and give it that life and glory that we know the Orphanarium has inside compared to the outside real world. So we'll be getting into that into some later episodes. But at least we were able to download the model and see it in 3D form. Our previous animatic was all 2D. As you can see with these houses across the street, those are just placeholders for now. So we'll end up populating that side of the neighborhood with some 3D models, or possibly do a 3D/2D matte painting for the shots that we see it. But yeah, this is our tabletop, as you do in stop motion, just to build out the sets and elements and move things around. One fun thing that we did was getting into a little bit of the landscaping, again, to warm up some of the front of the houses. We added in some fences. We added in, some plants and trees and bushes and things like that. So what we're able to do is, again, just populate the neighborhood a little bit to make it feel more alive. We placed some cars out there as well. And John will dive into some of the models that we've been downloading. We have some new assets that we're going to look at as we can walk through the animatic eventually here. We'll show you the mailboxes that we brought in to the front of the Orphanarium. So we have our human-sized mailbox, Ma Peeb's mailbox, where she gets lots of letters and fanfare and people looking to adopt puppets. But then we also have our little small puppet mailbox, right? So that's where they can get their puppet tribune and get their own little pen pal letters from some of their friends that have been adopted and gone off across the world. So that's a fun way to just look at the scale of the different characters and the way that the Orphanarium overall is sort of built out to not only house Ma Peebs and its a common house in our scale, but the puppets have their own little fun stairs and doors and places that they can run in and out. So that's a fun thing to check out. If you want to take a look up here at the mailboxes, so we sort of built in this curb. I think we'll end up doing a little retainer wall, little stone, maybe 2 foot, 3 foot retainer wall at the edge of the sidewalk, as you would see with the landscaping coming down. And then we'll dress that with some native plants and trees to populate that a little bit. But what we wanted was a little bit of a step back here for the Orphanarium, again, as this historical home that Ma Peeves has taken over is a lot older than maybe some of the houses in the neighborhood across the street. So a little bit bigger of a plot of land, a little bit more room for the puppets to run around. We'll have the garden in the background. If you're familiar with the NFT garden scene that we did, that would take place behind the Orphanarium, and we'll build that out for future episodes. But we wanted to just give like a nice warm welcoming here and a pedestal for Enid to come out to the street. And so, John, if you want to go back to those mailboxes, and we'll take a look at the Orphanarium sign.
Yeah.
So here we have, this is just kind of a fun, you'll see it as we go through the animatic later here at the end of the episode. But essentially, we want to build in some storytelling props and set design that give you some reference without, being too on the nose with it. So we see Ma Peeb's mailbox here again, and the small puppet mailbox that they can grab their mail when they're running in. And then on the right, we just have a placeholder here for now, which would be Ma Peeb's Orphanarium for puppets. And so we'll do a nice design for that and model that sign. But for right now, it's a placeholder so we can see the size and position of where we want it within the shot. And eventually we'll see Enid run off to the Orphanarium here, and a couple more storytelling points that we'll get to at some point. But this is just a fun look at what we've been building out. We really like the moon right now in the HDRI, or the global, it's not HDRI, but the global lighting in Unreal. But a really great moonlight with some fog. So we're starting to dress in some of the trees in the background just to fill in the horizon line. That's something that, especially in stop motion, but I'm realizing in 3D as well, as we build out these tabletops for the neighborhood. And what you want to do is you want to be able to cover those edges and those corners so that you don't have a flat horizon line. So a lot of times when I'm working with a lot of the Christmas specials I do, Happy Honda Days, the binge, things that take place in the winter, maybe up at the North Pole, we have a lot of hills and trees that would help cover the corners. So we're going to take a similar approach here to using things such as the fences that we have across the street, build in some trees, and just kind of cover up that horizon line so it's not so obvious that we're at the edge of the world.
Totally.
And if you want to fly up, so one thing that as we build this out, we start to see how big the set needs to be. So depending on each shot, that's where we understand what we're seeing in the background and what sort of set dressing that we need to have, right? So in this case, and John, if you could, maybe let's jump into camera mode here
Sure.
to walk through some of the shots, and maybe we can just go chronologically.
Totally.
We can kind of show everybody the decisions that we made for the set dressing from a composition standpoint. And one thing with live action and stop motion, for each shot we're moving around trees or hills, and you might take the Orphanarium and move it a little bit based on the camera. So I'm getting used to working in 3D here with John, where we can build different scenes for each shot, so that if we do need to move around certain tentpole set pieces based on the composition of each shot, we're able to move those around individually, and then they'll reset and go back to a different position, right, into the next shot.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, everything can be keyframed.
So this opening shot, you can just scrub through it slowly, but we have this nice dramatic slow push in on Enid at the precipice of the curb in front of the Orphanarium. And there's a few things that we were trying to build in here just from my very OCD directing standpoint of composition, is to get these three houses first and foremost at the other side of the street, compose them in a way that were centered up to that middle house. Then from there, we figured out the distance of the width of the road for the car driving by. That was a little bit more based on some of the future shots. But as we go through each shot, we can adjust and build this environment to make it work for all the shots. Placing the lamppost, that was very, something important to me. I wanted to show the scale of the puppet compared to a human lamppost. We don't have any humans right now in this pilot, but we do have some cues for scale. So whether it be the houses, the cars, the lampposts, that'll give you a little bit of an insight into just how small and mighty these little puppets are. So that was kind of the idea for this. We're also seeing the back of the Orphanarium sign on the left, but we're not revealing what it says yet. We're revealing the mailboxes on the right. So that's just a little bit of a tease and foreshadowing to what we'll see in the final shot as Enid runs up. And then we have a car screaming by, so we had to, again, work with John and the stunt drivers on the speed of the car. So I think we're at about 30 miles an hour, I would say, and we have a nice shot of this car cruising by. And as we go into the next shot here, it's a little bit of a close-up on Enid running past, chasing that car, trying to flag him down. She does a little bit of a turnaround out of frame and kind of comes screaming back to a second car that's off camera. Again, that'll be a lot of sound design that tells that part of the story. But I think it's a fun introduction to finally, seeing her a little bit throughout this dialogue. And then we get to what is our reveal shot, the shot after this, where we're going to push in slowly on Enid for her final dialogue. Again, Julie and Colby, our sound engineer and sound designer, who also plays the part of Franklin in the podcast. If you haven't gone to the podcast, please tune in and listen to those. Plague Puppet Radio on Spotify. You can check that out. We'll send you guys links. But Preston and Franklin are sort of our hosts here. But again, a lot of the... we don't have any sound design or music quite in here yet, so that's going to build up a lot of the tension and momentum for this introduction to Enid. We'll see a little bit more of the Orphanarium. We'll probably pan up a little bit or tilt up a little bit so we reveal more of the house. We might be on a wider lens. I wanted this to really be just sort of setting the scene after we have that behind the shot and behind the shoulder shot, and then the close-ups. And we'll see a little bit of the sign back there. We still haven't done any rack focus or depth of field. So when you're looking at this right now, everything is in focus because we're just using a generic camera. We are going through different lenses, but we haven't done any depth of field or looked into rack focus and things like that. So that'll be something that we get to once we lock down these shots. This shot's the same for the most part. We're gonna build this out in 3D. So obviously there's some sketchy 2D stuff in there, but John was able to at least get a template for us to build out the street drain, which introduces a little bit of an element of danger for Enid to jump over that water pouring down and run out into the street, which takes us to this shot. Still working on this. We're still plugging in some set design. We'll work on the curb, but really no updates here. That's going to be more animation, working with Josh on the performance of running off. And again, for those of you familiar with the Christmas NFT, this is a shot I've done before as our hero Christmas puppet was jumping off the presents in front of the fireplace. So I just kind of wanted to use this again and maybe make it a little bit better. And I think it still tells a good story there. And then here you can see in this overhead shot, so this is our over the shoulder shot of Preston and Franklin inside the Orphanarium. Up on the 3rd floor, they're looking down on Enid as she runs across the street. But now you can see we've built out the environment a little bit more with the trees, the bushes in front. We have that nice little embankment and curb that has the stairs going up to the walkway. So I think it gives it more depth and shows a little bit more of the neighborhood in like a fun, lively way than we had it before. So we're just starting to populate this shot a little bit.
Yeah.
And then somewhere in here we're going to cut, and we're still working on the edit a little bit. Typically what I do is when I'm working with John and Josh, we'll overperform and overshoot some of these shots. So almost in a live action sense, we're getting coverage of some of these shots, which means that we may shoot a second or two before, a second or two after. We call those handles. And that'll give me the room and edit to find those sweet spots based on the editing with the movement of the cars and Enid. So some of these shots will look a little bit long in our previs because they're not quite cut down to what would be a typical animatic, but we're getting there. So some of these shots may be a little bit long right now, but you'll see the end results once we cut into them. And then, this great moment. This is all working out really well. We started dressing out the street a little bit on the right. Again, having some trees and lampposts to show the depth of the street so the horizon line isn't so flat. And we have some dimension there. We parked in a few cars. We've been talking about the technology, the automobiles, the era. We're certainly in current day, but we do want to bring in design sensibilities from different decades in different ways. That kind of cartoony car on the right there, I think, that's something we decided would be really cool as a miniature car, like a remote control car that the puppets would use because of their big heads and horns, so that we may get into more of a stylized sensibility once we're in the Orphanarium and the Rumpus Room, and we're in that magical world of the puppets where things are more based on their scale and their shapes and sizes. And we can get into more of that kind of funky, cartoonish look, that helps with the ergonomics and the just the size and ratio and shape of the puppets and things like that. But in the real world, we want to keep it, pretty classic, yet modern and real day. So we'll end up changing those out at some point. Yeah, nice little spin around again, shake her head to do like a wet dog, just kind of depleted and over it. And, she was a little bit oblivious to the danger she was walking into as she was mumbling to herself And that's kind of the end of the scene at this point to show Enid's adventure. And then I don't think we showed last time, and we'll share going forward. We can go back a little bit on another episode and show you guys the building blocks of the animatic and my thumbnails and how we went into Photoshop to then do a second version. So this is now sort of the upgraded version of the animatic working in Unreal. And we finally were able to get the Orphanarium model in, build out the stairs and the sidewalk for this final shot, which ends our opening scene going into the title sequence. And so here's a nice shot of following Enid up the stairs. Again, we'll see the mailboxes on the left, so you get that proportion. We'll see the sign on the right. And essentially what you're seeing here on the ground is a letter that Enid missed that came out of the mailbox. So we'll do some animation there with her running by, noticing the mailboxes. We have a little tease of a letter. Wind comes up. There's a storm brewing. Letter falls on the ground. We'll see a bit of that, and that'll pay off at the end of the pilot episode.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at. I mean, from a technical standpoint, again, a lot of this is just set dressing, moving around some props, trees, tentpole objects, trying to get the composition right. And then, John just works with me to be able to pull things apart, separate them, duplicate them, put fences around the houses, throw up some trees. We might rotate them. We're looking at the shadows and the lighting, and just trying to sketch it all in. And it's looking pretty good.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and it's just really the cadence and timing of these shots that's most important in storytelling. Obviously, we have the dialogue, but we also have a lot of sound design. We'll have music to fill in the gaps. And so this is a nice way for us to just really massage and work on that timing so that all the artists, John, Josh, Julian Colby doing the records, we all, have a blueprint moving forward here for what we need and what we need to update, and all those assets.
Definitely.
And again, no final animation here. This is all just stick figure poses that John's doing for timing. I'll bring all of these shots into Premiere, do a new edit, speed things up, slow them down, maybe punch in, maybe pull out, add a camera move just in post for then John to, I can feed that back to him, and then we upgrade it in Unreal 5.
Yeah, and also we're starting to get into some finer detail, but this is still pretty early blocking of the finer detail, and we'll be doing quite a bit with imperfections in things, and these
show them a little bit of the grass and the sidewalk. There's a lot of different things we can do with textures and displacement, and again, making things look a little bit more natural and organic. When we start building this out, as everybody, as you may have seen on previous episodes, they're very square and cut, and we're just moving pieces around like Legos. But once we have all the Legos set and we have the scene set up, then John and the team are able to come in here to texturize the grass, the wood chips, the stone. And we just continually upgrade and make decisions moving forward. So some of what you see here now may be at the end in the pilot, and some of it may be upgraded or augmented or embellished somehow.
Right. Definitely.
Yeah, the grass is really cool. I really like the dirt as well, just on the sides for now.
Yeah.
And these trees, we really like these trees. We found they not only cast great shadows, they have really good details. Again, if you're familiar with the garden scene, we're able to add in some animation to the trees. So if there's a little bit of wind, we're going to be adding in the rain as well, so things will get a little wet and have some more reflection on them, but we'll be able to get some movement with those trees and the wind, which is just a really nice subtle touch that's not too over the top, but gives it a little bit of life.
Definitely. Yeah, you can see.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then last but not least,
Mega scans trees.
oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are great. And the shadows,
Yeah.
again, are so crisp. And, we'll adjust the fog a little bit, again, add in some rain. But starting to feel like a good scene. And, again, building out those corners so we know what we're looking at per shot. And some of it, may not make sense. Like when you fly overhead and you look at something and you say, well, there's a random tree here, a fence or a hill. That's just because instead of designing the environment and building it all and then shooting within it, we're really aligning all these set pieces to fill in the composition for the framing of each shot. So some things might look a little weird when we fly overhead, but they make sense within the context of each shot.
Totally.
And then, we'll do a little paint job on the Orphanarium. I know Julie has some amazing ideas. We definitely want the Orphanarium to be a place of magic and wonder and mystery and colorful and fun. And so what we have right here looks a little dingy and dark, but we will get in there and dive into the textures and the colors and do a nice paint job on this, but still with respecting, the history of the architecture and the history of the building that we'll find out more about in future episodes. But yeah, so great to fly the camera around because you get a lot of really cool point of views, like even from underneath the porch where you were just at, as if Ma Peebs was standing at the front door and you're kind of looking out, just using the architecture to help frame these shots. You might have one thing in mind, but once you get in here with camera and, turn around and do something like this, and maybe Ma Peebs has a little rocking chair out there and, some more flowers and decorations. So we'll definitely do some landscaping here to bring it to life a little bit more, but gives you a nice vantage point to see the environment and where we're at and introduce you guys to the Orphanarium in the neighborhood. We hope to be doing these live streams. Thanks for everybody joining along. Again, please subscribe, pass on to any friends or family who might be interested in the Plague Puppets project, who follows along with Julie Adams and her artwork. Also going into our pilot series. This is going to be a lot of fun. So we're building out this first scene, and future episodes as we go into the pilot, we'll get into the dumbwaiter scene, our title sequence, we'll follow Enid on a journey up to the third floor to the rumpus room that we've been starting to build out. We didn't want to share that too much yet. I think we did a little bit last week, but we're working on that to a point that we'll bring you guys along to catch you up where we're at. And yeah, this is just the very first step. So appreciate everybody joining in. Hope that you love what we're sharing. If you have any questions, comments, please send them along. Again, we might open up this forum a little bit more as we have more to share and have a little bit more of a back and forth with the audience. So welcome to join in. But for now, we'll just catch you up weekly, hopefully on Thursdays, 3 p.m. Pacific time here on the West Coast. And in between there, we might do some last minute ones or bring Mop Peebs in or look at some other things on the YouTube channel, talk about the NFTs, Julie's IRL in real life puppets. We're putting a couple up for adoption. And so that's something that you can follow along on our Twitter and Discord. If anybody's on Discord, you can follow us along there at Plague Puppets and join our channel. So thank you all for joining along and hope you have a great weekend. And we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Thanks, John.